Their mantra is grow fast or die trying, and they're really growing faster than perhaps even they imagined, commanding a 95% market share of India's warehouse automation space. Well, it's my great privilege to have on the program Samay, Kohli and Akash Gupta, the founders of Grey Orange. And we're going to sort of spend the next half an hour trying to figure out what they do, but all of us, I'm sure, are connected to what they have developed in one way or the other. Tell me one thing before we get into details. You're both wearing shades of grey and orange. Grey, as I discovered, for grey matter, experience and intellect and reliability, and orange for fun, creativity and enthusiasm. Is that also your model? Is that how it also works for you, Akash, and then Samay?
Right, absolutely. I think it has to be combination of grey matter as well as creativity and fun while you are doing at least a startup, because it's going to be a long journey and you need that kind of thing to kind of take it forward.
Right. So, I love what I do and I have fun doing it, and therefore I do it, even though it is challenging. Samay, does that sort of sum it up?
Absolutely. This has to be a place where we love working, right? So we have to have fun at doing it. And then if you don't learn from your experiences, then there's no use of doing it.
Right.
So that's why it's grey and orange.
Right. So grey and orange and what they do. Well, like I said, India's warehouse automation market is largely in their hands. And I wanted to sort of try and help our viewers and me, of course, try and understand a bit of what you do. So what all those who are ordering things online, and if I may add here that some of our biggest e-com players like Flipkart, there's Snapdeal, Jabong, Myntra, and I would imagine a lot more are using your products in their warehouses, helping them get the products that their customers have ordered to the customer in record time, because now it's all about speed and also getting it right. Let's not compromise that. Give us a sense of your two main products, Sorter and Butler. What they do. You can choose any one and then I'll take it to Akash.
You take Sorter.
Right, so Sorter is basically a conveyor-based machine. So let's say whenever everyone orders things online, a warehouse basically kind of picks the items which we have ordered. Right. So once, let's say, all the items have been picked and you have, like, let's say 40,000 items, they very quickly need to be sorted out what is the location of these items to be shipped through flights. So what sortation system does is it sorts them into different cities or different pin codes. Right. So you keep on putting the packets on this machine, and this machine automatically sorts around 120 packets per minute for the warehouse to ship them very quickly to different destinations.
Right. So there's of course speed that is involved, because there's 120 packets a minute, and there's no need for any human intervention at this stage.
That's right.
Does that cut down error also? And of course
that cut down error hugely, because sorting packets at that speed, it will be pretty much impossible for a human being to do it accurately, right? And a machine, while reading a barcode, can do it very accurately. So that cut down a lot of errors.
Before I get into Butler, Samay, you were the first guys who thought of it, and you sort of moved ahead. At a time, you're a college startup. Let me first quickly tell our viewers, college startup on the campus of BITS Pilani is where the idea first came through. At that time, startups weren't as cool as they are. Flipkart and Snapdeal weren't really the buzzwords then. How did you think of being in this space then? Sort of like, how do you stay 5 steps ahead of the game? How did the idea even strike you? It was a gamble, wasn't it?
I think it's always a gamble. So, but I think that the thing that really catches us is seeing a problem which is really worth solving. And one of our seniors had invited us to one of these warehouses. And when we saw the amount of piles and piles of goods lying and people just trying to maneuver them and trying to do anything in it, something clicked, which just said that we don't know whether this is a huge business idea or not, but this definitely is a big enough problem which I think we could solve. And that's essentially how we got onto the problem of trying to solve it.
So is it fair to say that, there's of course a risk. We're not sure if this is a good business idea, but we want to try it, and then we'll see how it goes. Is that the approach that you had?
It's pretty much, as long as you keep pivoting, you don't have to be stuck to idea, I think, but that is fundamentally our approach, which is try solving a big enough problem.
And what was the support like at home, if I may ask? Because we are traditionally a society where people want you to sort of go down the tried and tested a little, like taking such a big risk, coming out from, say, a top campus, and not taking, say, more lucrative or, on the face of it, immediate lucrative offers. So what is it like? Was there convincing at home?
I think we'll answer individually.
Yes.
But for me, I think my parents were okay with starting up, but not right after college.
Right.
So they thought that, you know, you'll do 3-4 years of at least work X and then try to get into this.
Right.
So there was some amount of convincing at that level.
Right.
And the only thing that really I was trying to tell them was that in our entire college life, we were at the top of the game of robotics. So we thought that if we take a 2-3 year break per se by going and doing something else, we lose that advantage or that edge that we had.
Right. At least for me, we were starting when I was in third year, so you know, it was more of why don't I go and try it out?
Right.
Of course, like in my family, pretty much nobody is from the business background. Everybody is from the service background, and a lot of them from government services as well. So of course, it was initially, it took some time to convince them and give them confidence. But I think once you have gone for it, I think family just comes up and say, okay, you know. And for us, I think one thing that I always try to explain my parents is that at any point of time, if you can convert your passion into profession, I think that can't be better, right? So I think that's something that clicked for all of us.
That's also very fortunate. I'm sure that they're giving you a thumbs up for the way it's all turning out. But getting back to the products, we understood what the sorter does. What about the Butler?
So the Butler system is essentially, if you look at normal warehouses, right, people actually walk inside warehouses and find your items, the things that you've ordered online, in shelves and try to pick them off. We essentially tried to pivot or change that model all along, because we thought all the walking that people are doing is a very inefficient process. So what we said was, why don't the racks come to you?
13 kilometers, like you told
13 kilometers is what a person walks in a warehouse.
A day?
A day.
A day.
A
Wow.
shift, actually, not
Wow.
even a day.
Okay.
So he does in that 8 hours. So that's really something. Firstly, he doesn't like his job, right? And
That's true,
apart from that, he's actually being very inefficient. So he said, why don't we flip around the problem, which is we make the person stand still and that the racks come with the right items, so that he just has to keep picking items, and that's all he's doing. And so that's what the Butler system does, and moves these racks around. It actually, in terms of efficiency, a person can actually do somewhere close to 10 to 15 items an hour, which he can go and lift in a warehouse. With the Butler system, he can actually do close to 600 an hour. So that's kind of how efficient it makes.
To calculate how many times that is, but yeah, that really is wow. And you know, I just want to take sort of a look at we just take you back to your time on campus, and you know, like, it is a college startup. You were in your third year. You were still there, and you know, talk was happening. You were also privileged to be, say, on a top campus. You were at BITS. I'm sure there was a lot of excitement and all of that happening around you, but and a lot of people with a lot of ideas. So how did you two sort of zero in on each other?
We've actually been working for about 3.5 years before this startup. So the thing is that we were actually involved in a humanoid project, which we built, which was called It was a humanoid robot. So humanoid robot has 2 hands, 2 legs, plays kung fu and soccer. And that's what we were building before this. So as a result, I think...
This is not the one that was waiting tables at the college cafeteria.
No,
that's
that was another
project.
robot that we made.
I see, okay.
So we've been doing stuff together for a lot of
I think I started working with Samay like the first month I joined college. So it was,
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it was like August 2008 when we started working together on this humanoid project.
Okay. You know, you were just 25 and 28.
Yeah.
Lots of people would perhaps look at you and say, this is why India's startup space is buzzing. They're young, they are entrepreneurial, they have the ability to take risks. Money, of course, everyone wants to do well commercially, but for them, that's not be all and end all. You just, you know, mentioned that this is what I tell startups, you know, to sort of, and so on. For all those who are watching and sort of want to know, what are the lessons you've learned, the 2 lessons that you've learned, and 2 reasons why you believe you've been successful?
It's very important to have a good core team to start with. That's the team who's going to be with you in your ups and downs. So it's very, very important that in your initial year, 6 months, build a good core team of 4 to 5 people.
Is it tough to narrow in on those, to zero in on those 4 to 5 people?
Of course, because at that point of time, because you're not really known or anything like that, it's tough to convince people who are already doing some job or kind of thing. But you know, as tough it is, but it is equally important.
Fundamentally, the most important thing, and it's where a lot of startups get it wrong, I feel. That you know, the co-founders firstly is finding his stuff, but you get your co-founder. So that's co-founders are like fundamentally the most important thing. But right after that, what Akash is saying is actually correct. I don't know whether we planned it or not, but we turned out to be quite lucky on, you know, the first 5-6 people that we had. They are essentially the core part of the company today also. And they are not, you know, people who are just there because we could afford them at that stage.
Right. And that you would say is one reason for success, or do you want to add more?
Absolutely. I think second very important thing which is you know, getting the right culture initially and making sure, you know, these 5 or 6 people or core team that you have spreads that culture with you.
And especially as the space picks up, as hardware sort of picks up and gets more and more competitive, or you find more players, it's going to get tougher and tougher, I imagine, right?
You have a significant head start, so let's.
That's true.
Say,
With a 95% market share, you don't need to worry. Is part of the work culture everyone has to wear grey and orange?
Actually, they prefer so, but
it is. And there are brownie points for it.
We could do something about that.
Yes, you could. You could always do that. I want to just look at the hardware space a bit closely. From everything that we read online, there are lots of people who say, look, hardware isn't cool. It isn't, you know, it doesn't make it to front pages. The customer doesn't usually know what's happening about the sorter, the Butler, and other hardware excitement that might be happening. As a result of which, very often I've heard people say that funding gets tough. You know, the space isn't something that people are looking at. How has it worked for you? Is that been your experience, or do you believe that, look, you have a great idea, there's always going to be money? What would you say, Samay?
I won't say that the funding is tough. Of course, we might be spoiled and we might have been had the nice journey. But I think let's get fundamentals right. Hardware is tough, right? So, and it is tougher.
As a space, it is tough.
As a space, it's tough.
Explain why.
I think building hardware products which have electronics, mechanical, software.
I see.
It's
the
just
nuts and bolts work is tough.
It's an engineering problem. It's a tougher engineering problem. You don't control everything in your environment. So it's physically tough. Right?
Is that more tough being in India? Is it tougher doing this in India? You think if you were, say, in the West, say Japan or the US, it would be
for sure. So it is tougher in India.
What makes it tougher here?
I think the ecosystem. So, you know, there's one thing around job shops. So if you want prototypes, you can get them quite easily in the US. When you look at parts, you can do. So India has a lot of e-commerce, right? But this is e-commerce still consumer facing. We don't have e-commerce towards electronic goods, parts and that.
And of course, like just to give an example, right? When you do a hardware product, you got to have like a mechanical engineer, an electronics engineer, a firmware engineer, and a server engineer, right? Initially, there might be 2 people doing the whole thing, right? But you got to work on all the 4 fields if you want to get out with the product, right? So it's not about just sitting down and coding on your laptops, right? So it's about going to a vendor, buying something, getting it, you know, manufactured in some way, prototyping it, coming back, assembling, making PCBs. So it's a whole wider space to kind of
so actually being hands-on.
Yeah, it's
that is an important point you make, that it's not just
yeah.
sitting on your laptop coding.
I would say it's also important to not build cheap. I think we do that mistake a lot in India in hardware.
Is that part of our sort of jugaad mindset, that chalo jugaad kar lo, it'll work, something will happen?
So see, I think jugaad has a place in product development. It definitely, that is one of our strengths. But it also does not have a place in product development.
And how do you stay competitive?
I think price and you know, compromising on the quality is a function of scale. So as soon as you scale up, you can actually get the prices down, right? And you will go to scale and you'll do all of that. But imagine if in your R&D you used cheaper components or stuff like that, because of which you didn't even make something which was working. You lose the battle much more before you get to a product.